This is Bloomberg ETF IQ. I'm Scarlett Fu. It's time now for today's drill down, where we focus on one ETF. Eric?
Scarlett, today we're looking at an AI ETF, thematic. So this is the VistaShares Artificial Intelligence Supercycle ETF. AIS is the ticker. It's going to look through stocks to try to pick out ones that are involved in the AI space. This is a hot theme. There's about 12, 13 ETFs on the market that do this, and they've got about 7 billion. So it's one of the bigger themes. It's actively managed. Yes, and it's 75 basis points, and it's about 4 months old, and the market cap is 7 million. So it's still pretty small. It's a newbie, pretty much. So it's going to have to perform probably to get some assets. Let's look at what it holds. And I went into the sector breakdown. It's a lot of infotech, almost 88%. That kind of makes it somewhat different. It's got a lot of active share versus the S&P, of course. Most theme ETFs do. It's got a lot of active share versus AIQ, which is the biggest AI robotics ETF from Global X. And this one's going to have more international and a little more small cap than the Global X. Let's look at the performance of this one, AIS, versus AIQ. I also threw in chat, that's the Roundhill one, and the S&P. You can see it's only a couple months, so it's a lot of noise in here, but you see these numbers here. The AIQ doing a little better, could be because of that international or lack of small cap, but those things, it's just all going to play out how it plays out. I think, Scarlett, over the next year or two, if it can get a performance breakout, that should definitely help it get some looks.
Absolutely. Performance always does that, right? Eric, thank you so much. And joining us now to talk about this ETF is John McNeill. John is co-founder and CEO of DVX Ventures, and he's the former president of Tesla. John, as always, it's a pleasure speaking with you. Eric mentioned the name of the fund, and the word supercycle is in there. Artificial Intelligence Supercycle ETF. What is a supercycle versus a conventional market cycle?
I think, it's basically we as investors see major cycles, maybe once a career, like the Industrial Revolution, the Internet Revolution. And right now, as investors, we've got 4 or 5 happening simultaneously, where you're seeing major sectors really be invented and grow from nothing to substantial. We've got AI happening now. We've got electrification. We've got robotics. We've got space. And we've got biotech all happening right now. So what we decided to do was dive into each one of these deeply and understand not at a high level which stocks to follow, but really what the build sheet was for instance, an AI data center, which is why, as Eric pointed out, you see a lot of international and infotech stocks, because it turns out that NVIDIA is single digits of an AI data center in terms of its representation. But you've got a lot of networking software, you've got a lot of fiber optic software, and you've got a lot of connectivity between all of these chips that are powering these AI data centers. So when we went in and looked at the build sheet of an AI data center, what we found was over 60 public stocks, roughly half US, half international. And what we wanted to do was give investors exposure to the full stack of the AI infrastructure, not just kind of the headline stocks.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point. When you look at thematic ETFs, they have what I call M&A pop, especially if the smaller names have a decent weighting. If they get acquired, they can go up a lot in no time. Are you looking to include some of those possible M&A targets in here?
That's a great point. We're not actively looking at M&A targets, but these companies are going to naturally become M&A targets. And it's just one of the reasons we're actively managed, Eric, is because of this dynamic where you see big changes in the technology from quarter to quarter and sometimes within a quarter. And so, for instance, an AI data center has 4 times the fiber optic cable that a regular data center has. So that puts like old line stocks like Corning into play. Very large cap, but one that isn't in the AI conversation a lot unless you're deep into the problem. What we're seeing now with new AI data centers is networking hardware and software as a percentage of the total rack spend is projected to go, we think, from 10% to 50% of an AI data center. And just as you point out, that's naturally going to create M&A targets as some of these stocks become more visible to a wider pool of investors.
So M&A news would certainly be a good news story for a lot of these companies. What about tariffs? That can be seen as a bad news story here. And of course, there's a lot of questions about the resiliency of supply chains, the flexibility of these companies in light of all these tariff threats, these on-off tariff threats.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think one of the things I try to keep in mind, Scarlett, is that the United States isn't the only place where data centers are being built for AI. They're being built all over the world, and especially in Asia. So you've got a complex marketplace to look at as these tariffs potentially come in. But we don't look at it just from a U.S. eye. We look at it from an international eye and really focus on, okay, how will this affect the Asian data center builds? How will this affect the European data center builds? The Middle Eastern data center builds, which are becoming more and more part of the equation. And that's part of the active management layer that we're putting on, is being able to respond to not only U.S. dynamics, but international dynamics.
John, about 30 seconds left here. You're not your average ETF issuer. You were executive at Tesla and Lyft. And what drew you to the ETF world?
Guilty as charged, Eric. I'm not. I think what drew me in was, as people started to ask me about the electrification supercycle, I started to look into these ETFs. And what I found was the #1 EV ETF, electric vehicle ETF, its top 5 holdings were things like Apple, Microsoft, Google, and NVIDIA. There's no NVIDIA chip in a car. There's no real Apple revenue in a car, Google revenue in a car. What I found was those EV supercycle ETFs looked a lot like the S&P 500
Yes.
at a much higher price point. And what we wanted to do was dive into the build sheet of an EV and bring those 65 public stocks to bear so that you'd get a pure exposure as an investor versus just a repeat of the S&P 500.
Spoken like a true industry insider. John McNeill, really appreciate your joining us. John is DVX Ventures president and co-founder. Now, you can read more about this drill down plus the latest in the ETF industry when you subscribe to our weekly ETF IQ newsletter.